we're going to be covering Basic Veggies 101. We're going to start by prepping our heavy rimmed baking sheets. And for one of these I'm going to use for broccoli, the other I'm going to use for cauliflower. For both of these, we're going to use aluminum foil. And we're just taking a big sheet off without knocking things over. We'll wrap the ends over our pans. And the reason we're using aluminum foil for these two veggies is that we're using a really high temp on both the broccoli and the cauliflower. We're going to be roasting these at 500 degrees. And the one way, actually the main way to tell whether or not you should be using parchment paper or aluminum foil is what temperature you're using in the oven. Up to about 400 degrees, you typically want to use parchment paper. Beyond 400, especially beyond 425, so you could push the parchment paper to about 425. But if you're going beyond 425, 450, 475, 500, you want to use aluminum foil because the parchment paper will burn and potentially ignite past 425. So to keep you from lighting your oven on fire, you want to use parchment paper at those lower temperatures, 425 and below. If you want to be really careful, 400 and below. So we prep these. The next thing we have to do is we're going to preheat our oven to 500 degrees with these pans inside. What that's going to do is when we put the veggies on here later, it's going to help them to brown much quicker. We're going to get a lot more color, a lot more crispiness in a shorter period of time. So I'm going to pop these in the oven. We're going to start with our broccoli. So on here, I'm going to cut off the stem right about where most of the florets start spreading off. And then when we're trimming these off, we kind of aim for these little gaps. Let me see if I can get the angle right here. We aim for the little gaps where the florets connect, and we just kind of go around in a circle and keep going around in a circle until we get to the center, and then we sort of chop that in half. You could have left something like this together. If we separate it, we can create more surface area and help it cook faster. And if we're really particular, we can try to keep that flat side down on the pan. And that side's then going to get really beautiful browning because it gets better contact with the pan, just because it's got that surface area available. This is our broccoli. I'm going to grab cauliflower. So all we really need to do to start off here is we're trying to remove this stem. So we're just trying to get in there fairly close. Be really careful with your fingers. Keep your fingers well away from where you're cutting. And we're just trying to go around and pop that stem off. Now, if there's still some green leaves down here, you can just reach in and tear those off. It's not that big of a deal. They just don't really carry much flavor. So instead of breaking this up into all the separate pieces, which is totally fine if you want to do that the rest of the time, what we're going to do here is I'm going to break this up into eighths. So I'm going to cut it in half, rotate it, cut it in half again. And I'm going to cut each of these wedges in half as well. It's easier to do them if you stand it up a little bit. We're looking for the most stable side, and it's hard to get your angle from here. Just be careful. We've now got these 8 beautiful wedges, and we're going to season up our broccoli. My oven's preheated. Hopefully yours is now as well. That means our pans are nice and scorching hot as well. And we're going to season the broccoli, throw it into the first pan, really quickly season the cauliflower, throw that in the second pan. Actually, maybe we'll do it in one batch. So we've got our broccoli. We're going to start with olive oil. Be generous with your olive oil. because olive oil is not only delicious, it ends up being a heat medium. It allows the food to cook more evenly and better because the olive oil can transfer heat better than the outer layers of the vegetables. So it allows the outside of the vegetable to cook faster and more evenly. I'm using the fleur de sel as the Mayan gold. It's a big, flaky, crystalline salt. It's got a good moisture content to it. It's got a nice crunch to it. And fresh cracked pepper. You want to use fresh cracked pepper because there's significantly more flavor to it. Pepper is an oil-based flavor, and that oil can evaporate and dry up over time for pre-ground black pepper. It's the easiest way to evenly season things in a bowl. A lot of people who've been doing this for a while, they'll like stir it around and toss it up. And when you haven't done it so much, you end up losing a lot of things. Have one big bowl, have a slightly smaller bowl, put it on top, squeeze them together, and then move in circles. And once you take your now lid off, you can actually see that everything is perfectly coated in a light volume of oil. All of your pepper was evenly distributed. All your salt was evenly distributed. So that's a nice little hack to basically get perfect even seasoning on things. So I've got this full bulb of garlic here. Then we're going to chop off maybe the top quarter of it. All we're really aiming to do is expose most of the cloves. So it'll look something like this. Throw your garlic in the middle of here, and we're just going to wrap this up. Seal it nice and tight. And we're just going to tuck this in the corner of the oven while we're roasting everything else. And by the time everything else is done, we can take this out, and the garlic on the inside is going to have a much mellower flavor. And it's also going to be incredibly soft. It's going to be spreadable. So you can just squeeze it out with a knife or scoop it out with a little spoon or a knife and spread it on bread or add it to any of your veggies after the fact. But it's super easy. We're going to do the same thing for seasoning our cauliflower that we did for our broccoli. So olive oil, pepper, and salt. So now what we're going to do, this is the dangerous portion of our episode tonight. So I'm going to take out my two very hot pans from the oven. I'm going to set them on top of the stove. I'm going to immediately transfer the broccoli to one of them, spread them out a little bit so they cook evenly, and then transfer the cauliflower to the other. Get the flat sides down for the cauliflower because they're big wedges and it's pretty easy to do. Right back into the oven so that we don't lose too much heat. And I'm going to tuck that bulb of garlic in somewhere at the same time. Make sure you've got either a good oven mitt, or if you're using a towel like I tend to do, you fold it over several times because these pans are very hot. 500 degrees is remarkably much hotter than 400 or 350. Start with the broccoli, and then we're going to do the cauliflower. Okay, these are going back in the oven. We're going to put my broccoli on the top rack just because this one's going to be coming out sooner. It's going to be slightly easier to reach it. There we go. And tuck the garlic in right down there. The broccoli is going to be in there for a total of 10 minutes. Cauliflower, because it's a little bit thicker, is going to be in there for a total of 20 minutes. For each of these, halfway through, we want to either shift it up or stir it around. So for the broccoli, we're going to set a 5-minute timer. And in 5 minutes, we're going to pull it out, stir it up, and then put it in for another 5 minutes. Once the broccoli's done in about 10 minutes, that's when we're going to flip the cauliflower. You're going to see how much color is on that cauliflower and how beautiful it is. And then we put it in for another 10 minutes. While that's going on, we can start prepping the carrots and the mushrooms. So the broccoli, we're 5 minutes in. We're going to flip this. Just be careful not to tear all of your foil when you do this. So you'll see there isn't a ton of color on some of these. Let me get it in close for you. We don't see a lot of color yet. On some of these, like right here, we've got some color showing up, but we're expecting a lot more color on this cauliflower, or broccoli rather, before it's done. So if we put it in for another 10 minutes and we find we don't yet have the color we want, or another 5 minutes, and we don't have the color we want, just put it in for another 5 minutes. Keep an eye on it. And a general rule of thumb when you're roasting veggies is and it sounds really stupid, but you roast until done. And all that really means is until you can basically stab it with a fork and there's little to no resistance with that fork. So if you grab a fork right now as a way to kind of tell the difference over time, and you start poking at some of these stalks, they're pretty stiff and sturdy. They're not really giving at your fork. So you know you want to put it in for more time. And that's like the magic to roasting vegetables. That little skill, that little check, poke it with a fork. If it's soft, it's done. If that's the only thing you walk away with tonight, you've got a really great base for roasting veggies. Hey, Google, set a 5-minute timer.
Sure, 5 minutes, starting now.
Okay, so at the end of that next 5 minutes, we're going to take out the broccoli, see whether or not it's done, see whether it's not got enough color, because we want a good amount of color on this. Color and darkness is more often a sign of flavor than it is of burning. And we're often really hesitant to let things stay in the oven long enough to really develop the rich flavors. Broccoli can be a delicious, nutty vegetable if we let it roast long enough. And even if it goes a little too long, the little bits at the end will get dark, but the main stalk of it's pretty resilient, so it'll be fine. So at the end of the next 5 minutes, that's when we also flip the cauliflower. We'll put that in for another 10 minutes. While that's all going on, we're going to prep our mushrooms and carrots. So we're going to cut these into quarters so that you hardly have to do any work, because I want this to be really nice and easy. Throw that into bowl. Actually, I'm gonna use this bowl we used for the broccoli. That's my lid. Quarter this guy. And you'll hear differing opinions from folks about whether or not you need to remove the stem on your mushrooms. So some people will say, oh, the stem is really tough and woody. It's not that pleasant. If you're roasting, it's not that big of a deal. If you would prefer to remove it, the easiest way to do it, typically, hold the mushroom, grab the stem, and just pull to the side, and it pops right off. And then you can add that to your trim bowl. I'm often not too worried about the stem on my mushrooms. And you'll recall in the WhatsApp group and in the email you should have received today, I called out you can get cremini mushrooms, brown mushrooms, button mushrooms, white button mushrooms. It doesn't really matter, because those are all, including portobellos, the same mushroom. They're all this mushroom. Some of them just have a different label on the package. The white ones are just grown in a different environment. They don't have any light. So they grow with a white cap because they don't have any light in that environment causing the top to react to that light and become brown. Portobello mushrooms are cremini mushrooms that are allowed to grow longer, so they got bigger. That's it. Prep these carrots. So what we're going to do on these carrots first is something called top and tail. It just means remove the top, remove the tip. Just the two ends. I thought it'd be fun to kind of show you a technique for cutting carrots that gives you fun shapes. Fairly easy to do. And it also can help you get more even cooking times. And it's, I believe the French term is called like a tournée or something. But we're going to do kind of a knockoff version called a rolled cut. So your first cut is actually going to be at a pretty extreme angle. You can see where the knife is to the carrot. We cut that, then you roll it to the other side. So we had it like this, and we have a cut at this angle, and then roll it to the other side. So the cut's now at that angle. And I leave the knife at the same angle as before. So I've got this strangely shaped, almost like a football carrot. And what you do is you just keep rolling it and slicing like this. And what this does is it gives you pieces of carrot which are fairly uniform in size. So they're going to cut at roughly the same rate. We can check on our broccoli. Okay, I'm already seeing a lot more color on the broccoli, which is great. I still want more though. I'm going to flip it and take a look at what the bottom looks like. Yeah. And you'll find that different nights of the week, different quantities of food, they're going to need different cook times for certain things. So last night, 10 minutes was perfect for the broccoli, but I probably had like half of this. And so they weren't giving up as much steam to each other on the pan and they cooked faster. So if a recipe tells you cook something for X number of minutes and you look at it and it doesn't look done, trust your senses. Your senses have a better idea of what's really going on than the recipe did. So I'm going to put this in for another 5 minutes. I am going to flip the cauliflower. And let's see. Yeah, that's a little sticky. It's okay. So you can see how much color there is on this guy. So you get a lot of color on the cauliflower when you roast it this way. And that color generally equates to flavor. I think I probably didn't give these enough oil tonight, which is why they're sticking a little bit. Which is fine. Just be careful with it. I'm just going to put these in for, this is going to be in for another 10. And the reason the cauliflower is going for longer than the broccoli is because we did these bigger wedges. If we chopped the cauliflower to be as small as we did for the broccoli, we would use roughly the same cooking time frame. Again, using our senses to make sure that it looks good and it's soft. And I neglected to do the fork test that time because my eyes told me I want more color. But we will do the fork test the next time, or if you're checking yours now, feel free to do the fork test. We've got our carrots. We'll move quickly because these will be done soon. We're prepped. Carrots go in. Just going to do some roll cuts. It's totally cool if your knife skills are a little bit slower than this. I do a lot of practice, which gets me the benefit of speed. Okay, so we're going to do the same exact thing we did with the cauliflower and the broccoli. We're going to do olive oil, salt, pepper. And with the carrots and the mushrooms especially, you do not have to be scared, as much as you typically might be, to over roast these, because these carrots are super hardy. They're a really dense, tough vegetable, and these mushrooms have a ton of moisture in them. Hey Google, stop the timer. So these mushrooms have a ton of moisture in them already, and you're going to see them shrivel up a little bit in the oven. Their color's going to change a lot, and then you kind of get to pick whenever you want to take it out. I like to let them go fairly long. I let them go for something like 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes in the oven for these. The beauty is, if you've got a mushroom that roasts for too long in the oven and it becomes almost dry and crispy, because of kind of the physical makeup of a mushroom, it becomes delightfully crispy. And for certain mushroom species, especially shiitake, it tastes and feels almost exactly like you're eating bacon. So if you want a nice bacon substitute, get some shiitake mushrooms, over roast them, and then throw that into a dish. It's going to taste exactly like and feel exactly like crispy bacon. So yep, I already see some folks seasoning some stuff as I am sharing. So got that spun up. And then the only difference for cooking for these, actually I'm going to take the broccoli out so that we can do it because I need that pan again. The difference for these, I'll talk as I do, is that we're going to drop the temperature of the oven to 400 instead of 500. And then we're going to roast it on parchment paper instead of aluminum foil because it's less likely to stick to the parchment paper. Here we go. So this is what I wanted for broccoli. Hey Google, set a 5-minute timer.
Sure.
So that last 5 minutes, we'll finish off our cauliflower. And when I poke these, they're pretty soft. There's a little resistance, but it's not much. Especially when it's one of the exposed cuts on the broccoli, that just slides in with no resistance. But you can see how much color is going on in here. And all that color is just a sign of flavor. So I'm going to transfer those to a bowl so I can eat those in a little bit. I think I'm the only one that's not been digging in yet. Another added benefit of using aluminum foil, beyond the fact that there's little to no cleanup on the pan now, is it cools really quickly and allows you to make a funnel for transferring food. So I pick it up and I just point it at the vessel I want it to be in. Now it's all done. Now we can get to the garlic. So a lot of color going on here. So you can take the side of a knife, you can use a bench scraper, and we're just going to squeeze this. You're going to see the garlic ooze out of there. Now you've got this really beautiful roasted, super soft garlic. You can spread this on whatever. You can add it to your veggies. I'll probably just throw this in the bowl with my garlic and cauliflower, and they'll have a really beautiful, soft garlic flavor. Because we roasted it, it's not going to have that harsh flavor you would have with a raw garlic anymore. So for this now, it's still pretty hot, but to keep things moving, I'm going to add a sheet of parchment paper and then not yet put the carrots and mushrooms on because we've got about 5 minutes on the cauliflower. But what you're going to want to do is when your cauliflower is done, drop the temperature of the oven to 400 degrees. Let it have a couple minutes to drop down to 400. Throw your mushrooms and carrots on there. Roast them for 30 minutes. Check them. See if they are as done as you would like. If they are, take them out. If not, do another 5-10 minutes. Poke them with a fork. The carrot is going to be more telling as to softness than the mushroom will be. And just enjoy and realize how little you had to season these, and most of the flavor is really just coming out of the food. We put a little salt, a little pepper, a little olive oil, and we ended up making delicious food.